I made a choice for the better, and I became Iron Man.
You mean Mr. Metal Mojo?
Oh, I see that sticking.
What If Season 2 Episode 4 was one of my all-time favorite episodes ever of Marvel TV. It brilliantly fits into the canon, revisits the best MCU movie, and is filled with Easter eggs, references, and little things you might have missed. Welcome back, ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy. I loved this episode. It brilliantly recreated the energy of a Mad Max car chase. It's a brilliant companion piece to Thor Ragnarok, and it showcases the essence of Tony Stark's character better than any MCU film since Iron Man 1. It wasn't perfect. I have some notes, but I cannot wait to break this thing down for you.
Get out of here, you crazy kids. Go, go, go!
So, the episode begins with a flashback to the finale of Season 1, when the Watcher assembled the Guardians of the Multiverse to fight Infinity Ultron. Now, at the time, that lineup was composed of heroes and villains that were featured in that season, except for this version of Gamora. 2 years ago, we reported that this was from an episode of the show that they didn't have time to complete, so they just pushed the episode to Season 2. And now we finally get to see it, and man was it worth the wait. The Watcher says,
Gamora's path to becoming the hero of her story began in someone else's.
Which is a really neat way to transition from Gamora being the protagonist we knew from the finale to Tony Stark being the protagonist of this episode. Then we go to the intro of the show, which by the way we covered in our episode 1 breakdown. Watch that if you have time. We had a lot of fun making it. Then we cut to Tony Stark in the Avengers, guiding a nuclear missile through the wormhole. Now this is a pretty perfect recreation of the final moments of him in space. Now the Watcher calls this
The ultimate hero's play.
which is a play on what Steve Rogers said about Tony earlier that same day.
You're not the guy to make the sacrifice play, to lay down on a wire and let the other guy crawl over you.
Now, this is all very, very cool because back in 2012, there was a rumor that Tony Stark was going to end up in space at the end of that film. And the rumor said that he would go off to join the Guardians of the Galaxy like he did in the comics. So this may have actually been something that Marvel was discussing behind the scenes, and now we actually get to see it play out.
Finally.
So the wormhole actually closes with Tony Stark still inside of it, which recreates this event from Thor Ragnarok. When Thor was knocked around in the Bifrost, which is a particular kind of wormhole by the way, he ended up on Sakaar. So the fact that the Tesseract and the Bifrost both sent people to Sakaar really feeds into the theory that Odin used the Tesseract's energy before he hid the Tesseract away on Earth.
The Tesseract was the jewel of Odin's treasure room.
So then Tony lands in the palace of the Grandmaster, voiced once again by the great Jeff Goldblum.
Hey, look, who is this handsome dog?
Now remember when Thor landed on Sakaar and his powers were dampened and the Grandmaster called him
Sparkles?
And here he tries to give Tony his own demeaning nickname.
Mr. Metal Mojo Man.
The one he settled on, Mojo, is actually an Easter egg to the X-Men. Now, one of the best X-Men villains, one that we really should be seeing in the MCU, is this extra-dimensional TV mogul named Mojo who feeds off people who are like watching his TV programs. He like craves high ratings. And, like the Grandmaster, Mojo entertains people by making different superheroes fight each other.
They want blood and guts and love and hate. They want entertainment.
Hey person, what are your New Year's resolutions?
I don't have any.
None?
Nope. I used to have a real problem with stress eating, like I was constantly snacking all day, and then I would always suck on breath mints that would give me headaches, and all of this was just caused by stress, so then I quit.
How'd you do that?
Well, I kicked my bad oral fixation habits by using Fume. They're the sponsor of this video.
Oh, is that a vape?
Nope, it's not a vape, it is not electronic, and it does not have pods filled with potentially harmful chemicals. Instead, it has these plant-based cores that are infused with natural flavors to create natural flavored air. I recently started my favorite flavor, orange vanilla, and it even freshens my breath.
Yeah, it does smell very nice.
Thanks, ma'am. You see, Fume uses plants and behavioral science to help you trade out your negative habit for a positive one. Plus, it has adjustable airflow and is designed with movable parts and magnets for fidgeting, giving your fingers a lot to do, which frankly is very helpful for calming my anxiety. Fume makes switching easy and even fun. They have thousands of 5-star reviews from more than 150,000 customers who have used Fume to change their lives and switched when other solutions just didn't work. So head to tryfume.com/ScreenCrush and use the code ScreenCrush to save 10% off when you get your Journey Pack today. The Journey Pack comes with 3 unique flavors and everything you need to finally be free of your bad habit. Plus, you can upgrade your Journey Pack with Fume Solano. This includes a premium walnut barrel and onyx black-coated mouthpiece that has a smoother finish, and you still get 10% off. That is tryfum.com and use the code ScreenCrush to get an additional 10% off your order today. Now, back to what I was saying. Rachel House also returns as the Grandmaster's loyal servant Topaz with her melting stick from Ragnarok. Tony is surprised to find out that the Battle of Earth was days ago because, like the Grandmaster says in Ragnarok,
Time works real different around these parts. On any other world, I'd be like millions of years old.
and of course he tells Tony something very similar here.
You know, time works differently here.
Tony immediately sees Pepper on the news, which reminds him of his primary motivation to return home. Now, you might be reminded of him at the beginning of Avengers Endgame when his only thought after the snap was to get home to the woman he loved.
When I drift off, it'll be like every night lately. I dream about you.
Tony tells Grandmaster that he's put his party days behind him, which is mostly true. In the comics, Tony is a full-blown alcoholic, which was explored in the brilliant story Demon in a Bottle. In fact, there's a Demon in a Bottle reference later in this episode when Tony uses this phrase to talk to Valkyrie about her drinking problem.
To feel alive, if only for a moment, you know? So you can forget whatever mistake has you chasing that demon in a bottle.
In the MCU, we have seen Tony really lean into excess, especially in Iron Man 2.
Tony, how do you go to the bathroom in the suit? Just like that.
And then he only has like a casual drink in the MCU afterwards. Now, just like in Thor Ragnarok, Sakaar is filled with these like incredible designs that are either homages or direct copies of the work of the legendary artist Jack Kirby. Kirby created or co-created like most of Marvel's biggest heroes, and I love seeing his wacky cosmic designs brought to life in the movies and TV shows. And we saw a lot of these same characters in Thor Ragnarok, like this guy in the helmet entering the arena.
Nice helmet.
Keeps my face pretty.
When they're in the Grandmaster's booth, the same one where he sits with Loki in Thor 3, he says,
"It's my birthday."
And remember, his orgy yacht had a birthday setting on the console.
It's my birthday! It's my birthday!
So what we're seeing here is the Grandmaster's games before he started up the Contest of Champions, when everybody was basically competing in a space NASCAR race.
No, these are chariots.
Alright, I guess it is more like a chariot race, like the ones they held in ancient Rome, as depicted in classic films like Ben-Hur. But man, I love this sequence so much. Like, this is the cosmic MCU meets the racing game Twisted Metal. This makes me really want them to make like a Marvel kart, like Mario Kart, but like with Marvel characters and like these machines in different cosmic settings. Like, notice how Valkyrie's little pod even has these two wings on the side, much like the winged helmet that Thor wears in the Gladiator arena in Ragnarok.
You're sure to talk about Thor Ragnarok a lot. Has anybody ever told you that?
That's right, Doug. They did also return Mark Mothersbaugh's awesome score for this episode. Now, I should note here that the guy voicing Tony is, of course, not Robert Downey Jr.
You can't afford me.
It is veteran voice actor Mick Wingert, who has voiced Tony Stark in various animated projects over the years and in What If Season 1.
I told you, I don't want to join your super secret boy band.
Now, he may not sound exactly like Robert Downey Jr., but he sure does constantly drop sarcastic comments just like Tony does.
All right, ready to rock and roll? I had to say that at least once. Not you, Stabby.
Yeah, I didn't get a lot of his references because I am not a man in my 40s.
Don't worry, Doug. I will explain those references to you as we go along.
And this is why we are the best of friends.
Aw, thanks, buddy, and thank all of you for watching and supporting our channel as we work to bring you these What If breakdowns on every single day as the episode launches. We absolutely could not run this channel without all of you, and if you would like to keep supporting us, you could please check out our merch store at ScreenCrushMerch.com, where we design the shirts ourselves. Every month we drop new designs, like this month we have this awesome RIP DCEU t-shirt to commemorate the end of that franchise. We also have our Fraser Beast shirt, the Mando and Grogu as Elliot and E.T., and many, many other designs that we have designed ourselves. Guys, shopping our merch store is the absolute best way for you to directly support our channel. Thank all of you for watching. Now back to the breakdown. Now, I have watched this chase sequence 3 times, and every single time I keep noticing more little details, like how this zoom into the cockpit of Valkyrie is so much like so many shots of Fury Road. And the way they keep the camera low to the ground is an old camera trick that George Miller employed in the first Mad Max movie. Putting the camera closer to the ground creates the illusion of increased speed.
I feel the need for speed.
Also, notice these people in the crowd who are dressed like Celestials. Now, I'm not sure if this is because like they worship the Celestials, or if they're just more Jack Kirby inspired designs. So the episode borrowed a lot of camera tricks from George Miller and other artists, like how in the second race we get these constant tiny crash zooms every time Gamora is about to do something small, even like pushing a button. But they also added these incredible creative design elements, like a giant car that's essentially a big engine that sucks up all of the dead cars and obliterates the racers.
Now this is pod racing.
God, this was so much fun. And even like this little moment where Valkyrie reverses up this tank tread that looks a lot like this vehicle from the Clone Wars. Afterwards, they throw hamsters at her. They used to throw food, but now there's food shortages and they think it's just bad optics.
It's considered uncouth.
Although, I think the reason there might be a food shortage is because there are so many hamsters eating all the grain. So, in the movie, the champion is the Hulk, but here it's a giant elephant that Korg calls Snuffy! And maybe he's called that because he's a big elephant, like Snuffleupagus on Sesame Street.
So much for staying for one drink.
Oh, you're doing the thing. He's doing the thing.
So then, Tony joins the fray. And remember, this is his Mark 7 armor, the first armor that he had that he could actually summon to himself with his wristband.
Boy!
And when he meets Korg, he calls him Mount Rushmore, because he's got a big rocky face.
I'm made of rocks, as you can see.
And man, guys, this just really cemented how much I miss Tony Stark.
Agent Romanoff, you miss me?
Like, the writers of this show must have had a blast writing for this character again. We need a hero with this kind of confidence and swagger, who is constantly calling people like old pop culture names.
Hold up there, Lady Grinch.
You're a mean one, Mr. Grinch.
And then Gamora shows up. She is wearing the same battle armor that we saw her wearing in Avengers Endgame in the flashback back in 2014. Now, she wore this just prior to being assigned to join Ronan. And of course, like we saw in Guardians of the Galaxy, that's when she had a change of heart and she then decided to get away from Thanos. Now, when we met her in that Endgame flashback, she was already pretty anti-Thanos. So you might be wondering what happened to her between 2012 and 2014 to make her want to turn against her dad. I mean, after all, the person we see in this show is pretty much an acolyte of Thanos.
I am the daughter of Thanos, the Mad Titan, the one burdened to bring balance to this universe.
I think the event that made her want to turn against Thanos is when she found the map to Vormir. We saw in a flashback conversation in Endgame that she wanted to keep that map from her father. Maybe the prospect of actually dusting half the universe finally hit home for her, and she didn't want everyone else in known existence to suffer the same kind of pain that she did when she was a little girl. Anyways, notice that Tony is wearing a black sweater in this show instead of the Black Sabbath t-shirt that he was wearing in the Avengers. I think this is because Sharon Osbourne is a ruthless business manager who probably wanted too much money to use the logo.
Mom just wants to get paid. What can you do?
Pay me my money.
So because it's been a few days since the Battle of New York, Gamora is on Sakaar to kill Tony Stark. Instead, she gets chipped, and the two of them are thrown into Hulk's love suite that we saw in Ragnarok.
The red, the white, just pick a color.
Then he name drops.
Not hanging around to play Dr. Moreau's Hunger Games, that's for sure.
So Dr. Moreau is from the Marlon Brando movie where he plays a mad scientist who makes freaks and clones, and the Hunger Games actually is...
Hey, wait, I got that one. I understood that reference.
Good, buddy. Now, after he and Korg get away, he asks how the Grandmaster gained power.
Did he gerrymander the districts?
Gerrymandering is actually a process here on Earth in American politics, where politicians redraw congressional districts to favor their own parties. It's supposed to be illegal, but it's more like frowned upon, kind of like brown bagging at a Little League game.
Brandon! Get on the damn bag!
And man, Korg hits it out of the park with his response.
I should never have voted for him.
Remember, in Thor Ragnarok, Korg was the more politically conscious person on Sakaar.
I tried to start a revolution but didn't print enough pamphlets, so hardly anyone turned up.
During the next fight, Korg does the same ground pound that Hulk did to Loki in the Avengers. You know what? In the MCU can stop referencing that. We're good. Come up with some new things, please.
You're repeating yourself. You're repeating yourself.
Then Tony shocks Gamora with a similar device that the one Thor used on Loki when he betrayed him in Ragnarok. And then he calls her Xena, a reference to the 90s television series Xena, Warrior Princess. And then Tony gets this heart-to-heart monologue where he tells Gamora that New York was not a game to him. And of course there he means Phil Coulson. And I loved that he spends the episode trying to help her change. Tony is like able to see things in people, like when he saw the potential superhero in Bruce Banner.
So you're saying that the Hulk saved my life? Saved it for what?
I guess we'll find out.
And with Gamora, he sees himself, someone who is fighting to live up to their father's expectations instead of choosing their own path and following their own heart.
But I'm not my father. You're not your father. I made a choice.
Tony's entire arc in the Marvel Cinematic Universe was always trying to make up for his past sins. Like he says later on, he did things that hurt people, and everything he does now is to make amends.
You really gonna risk everything for a bunch of strangers on an alien junk planet?
Yeah, that's what I do. I'm Iron Man.
I love how this entire episode was grounded in that basic tenet of Tony Stark's character, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more later on. Korg says,
One time he used me as a paperweight, and can you imagine how that felt? Just to have to sit on paper, which is my nemesis?
Now this is a follow-up on his rock, paper, scissors joke from Ragnarok.
You don't need to be afraid unless you're made of scissors.
Which is also referenced in the first episode this season.
But it's uncuttable paper, because it's made of rock.
And they also mentioned somebody living on a farm upstate, and we all know what that means.
Yeah, they probably took him out to the barn and shot him.
Exactly. Why? You know what that means?
Yeah, man, I'm not stupid. I know what that means.
Okay, and then we get some rock guitar for the classic Tony Stark building a new Iron Man suit montage. Like his first suit, this montage begins with him rolling out blueprints. He's got the goggles, he's got the blowtorch, except now he's using a bunch of scrap on an alien world instead of a bunch of scraps in a cave. And look, maybe I'm wrong here, but does the Grandmaster Tower have Khonshu in it? Did an Egyptian bird god at one point travel to this world and compete in a chariot race? I really think that might have happened and I want to see that episode.
Yeah, man, that'd be awesome.
Right? So when Tony presents his ultimatum to the Grandmaster, he calls him
Hey, Technicolor Dreamcoat!
Which is of course named after the Andrew Lloyd Webber musical, Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat, and really, that is a totally superficial reference to the gaudy collars the Grandmaster wears. Tony references are always just based on how people look, and rarely does he bother to look beyond the surface.
Manchurian Candidate, you're killing me. There's a truce here. You can drop...
Like even when he says,
slap me and call me Spartacus.
Like, okay, that's a reference to the movie Spartacus because I guess Ben-Hur was just a little bit too on the nose. And while I'm complaining, I thought the fake slow-mo walk here was just a bit too much.
Thank you for indulging me, guys. I've always wanted to walk very slowly.
This seems like one of those MCU moments where characters, like, they look cool, but then the movie has to, like, make sure that we know they're not trying too hard to look cool. You know, like this.
Stop.
So, just a few fun things I noted during this final race. I loved this continuous final shot of all the racers zooming further out into each cockpit. And then there's this moment when they drive out of the mouth of a statue of a Celestial, which seems like an homage to the Joel Schumacher Batman films, where Gotham City was filled with these giant statues that they would drive the Batmobile onto during a chase. Now, during Tony's pep talk to Gamora, he talks about his well-documented daddy issues.
I never got to say goodbye to my father.
Now, in our Deeper Meaning of Iron Man video, I talked about how Tony's lifelong expectations of living up to his father led to him becoming kind of numb to the world. He blindly followed anyone that told him that that's what his dad would have done.
You finally outdid yourself, Tony. You made your father proud.
And here's the thing, Tony and Gamora, like, never share a conversation in any movie. Like, remember this?
Where is Gamora?
Yeah, I'll do you one better. Who's Gamora? I'll do you one better. Why is Gamora?
And they've lived their lives going down very similar paths, so it was awesome to see them interact like this. Like, this is what makes crossovers great. Remember that? Remember when the MCU used to actually just have characters from different franchises cross over with each other? That was a lot of fun.
I wish there was a way to know you're in the good old days before you've actually left them.
Tony also says his dad was no Atticus Finch, a reference to the wise fatherly figure from To Kill a Mockingbird. And then, Tony Stark turns his armor into a race car, which is so perfect.
Autobots, transform and roll out.
Like we saw in Iron Man 1, that he had an affinity for classic cars, even inspiring the color of his Mark III suit.
Throw a little hot rod red in there.
And of course, he drove a race car in Monaco before he was attacked by Ivan Vanko. The wheels of the car are even arc reactors, and just for a second, I thought the car was going to levitate, improving on the flying car his father Howard Stark couldn't get to work in Captain America First Avenger. And then, after the Grandmaster tries to cheat, he gets his melty stick used on himself. I'm melting. You know, quoting Wizard of Oz.
I'm melting!
And of course, the Grandmaster is really into how this feels.
Hey, I like it.
And then Valkyrie is elected leader of Sakaar, just like she was made leader of New Asgard in the main MCU timeline. And then we get that incredible cliffhanger. Gamora delivers Tony Stark to Thanos, who is still on his floating rock chair that we saw in Avengers post-credit scene and in Guardians 1. But Tony is used as a distraction as Gamora leaps above him with the melty stick and then stabs Thanos in the chest. But and of course, this is a callback to Thor using Stormbreaker and hitting Thanos in the chest with it instead of hitting him in the head.
You should have gone for the head.
So we're actually left not knowing if Thanos lives or dies, which is one of the hallmarks of Marvel What If stories in the comics. They always end on these really fun, nebulous cliffhangers. Except because we saw Tony and Gamora melting the Infinity Gauntlet last season, like, we know they survived.
How do we put a suit of armor around the world, around the galaxy?
Well guys, that's our breakdown of episode 4. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, hey, welcome to the channel. Nice to see you. Please subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. And for ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.